You're listening to the Clive Barker Podcast. Please do us a favor and subscribe or follow wherever you get audio so you never miss a release. Episode 337. He worked with Image Animation on Nightbreed, Lord of Illusions, Hellraiser 3, and continues to be a part of lots of projects like Aquaman, Predators, and the upcoming Renfield. Martin Mercer joins Ryan and Jose and Ed and Nina of Coenobium. This episode is sponsored by Don Bertram's Celebrate Imagination. Don Bertram is a longtime friend of Clive and advocate of his art, but Don's unique and inspiring paintings are for sale, and up to 50% of the proceeds go to the Arts in Medicine program at the Texas Children's Cancer Center. Click on the side banner and follow the link to his Etsy shop to have a look. All right, well, welcome. This is episode 337 of the Clive Barker Podcast. Good morning, Jose.
Hi, Ryan. Hey, Ed.
Good morning, Ed and Nina.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey. Today we have Martin Mercer with us. Welcome.
Good morning. Nice to be here. Thank you.
It's great to have you here. Thanks for taking the time to join our podcast and tell us a little bit about your career.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure.
Yeah. So you're talking to us from Los Angeles right now?
Yeah, that's
okay,
where I live.
We usually try to connect a little bit with the artist and the work. I guess the first question is, you got into this pretty early in your life. I mean, you were 18, 17 when you got started in the film industry?
Yes, I was. I've always wanted to work in film ever since I saw a film called Island on Top of the World. And I just love that film.
Me too.
Just seeing it, smoky cinema.
Disney, wasn't it Disney?
Yeah. And Albert Whitlock did the matte paintings. And, the airship was the thing that.
I love that thing. Yeah,
Hyperion, I think it was called.
Right.
And so that got me going, and always wanted to do it. And my dad was great; he's a great storyteller, and anyway, when I was at school, I met a friend, and that friend's father happened to be, which in Britain at the time, the chances of it happening so rare, he happened to be a special effects supervisor. His name was George Gibbs. George, unfortunately, he passed away last year, unfortunately, but he was a bit of a legend, Oscar winner, Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom, and Brazil, and just loads and loads of films. And so through my friend at school, I met George, and we went round to his house, and of course his garage was filled with all this stuff, so my eyes were just popping. I was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. Yeah, I just established a relationship with him, and eventually he took me and his son to the studios, and we saw the shooting of The Meaning of Life and the Crimson Permanent Assurance.
Oh, great. The models in that were fantastic.
They were brilliant, weren't they? It was Richard Conway.
Yeah, love that.
Conway did those. Yeah, and so it was just, as a teenager, just seeing all this stuff, and it was coming up to leaving school. And in Britain, we have what we call the sixth form, which is when you're 16, and you don't have to wear a uniform, and you can kind of do whatever courses you want before you go to college. So I was sort of working towards going to art college. And then I got into local art college by an interview and everything as you had to do. And then on the summer, I saw George, and I said, hey, George, any chance of, being a trainee? Because that was the only way in at the time, being a trainee. So he goes, I've got trainees, I'm doing Labyrinth, but if you want to work for nothing. So I said, yeah, absolutely. So I ditched the college and worked on Labyrinth, basically making tea. But George was good, you see. He would give me stuff to do. He wouldn't just say, oh, sweep the floors and shut up. He gave me a lot of stuff to do. And so I was on set operating these little, we had these mechanical birds, and you connect them to the battery and the wings would flap and the beaks would twitch. It was just wonderful being on the Star Wars stage at Elstree Studios, where they shot Labyrinth. So that was about 6 weeks. So that was my start.
Wow, what a start.
Oh,
that's amazing.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing Labyrinth in the theater when I was a kid, and it just blew me away. It was great. Did you happen to see the Netflix show that they revived Dark Crystal for a season?
I started to see it, and I kind of lost a bit of interest, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's too bad it was canceled.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's beautiful work and everything. I think I'd rather have them done something, new, to be honest. I think that was done in the past. It was that sort of time period. And I think the technology now, animatronic technology, is so amazing. I didn't watch it, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So did you meet Edward Gibbs in Islington?
George Gibbs.
Oh, yeah, George Gibbs, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it in Islington? Was that where you were from as well?
Oh, no, in Barnet. That's where Elstree Studios is in Elstree, which is in the borough of Enfield, Barnet.
And then you also worked with him on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, right?
Yeah, and that was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and that was interesting because George got me on Labyrinth. I've worked on Labyrinth, and then I didn't mention that he finally said, "Oh, Martin, I'm going to pay you now." So I was like £65 a week.
Finally,
yeah, I was like £65 a week, and I got the check.
No more tea making.
Well, no, that did carry on, but there was but there was Lucasfilm on the check. I was like, oh, that's amazing. But anyway, so that finished. And then George, again, really kindly got me onto Little Shop of Horrors, the miniature effects unit. And that was
wow, that's amazing. Lyle Conway was awesome on that.
Yes, he was doing those amazing plants. And then there was Richard Conway. There were two Conways. Richard Conway was doing the miniature effects. And Richard Conway passed away last year as well, unfortunately. But he was a legend. He did Baron Munchausen. He did Flash Gordon.
Fantastic.
And he specialized in doing everything. This was before CGI really came in, because actually
practical effects.
Right. Yeah. And Labyrinth had the first CGI, which was the title sequence, the owl.
That's right.
That's right. That was the first.
It was made on a supercomputer. I think it was the Cray supercomputer that they render that. Yeah. I got a chance to see one of those Cray supercomputers in Silicon Valley when I lived there for a while. They had it at the Computer History Museum. And that thing was wild. That thing was crazy. It doubled as a couch. That's how big it was.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? Now it's on your phone, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, or watch.
Yeah. Yeah. But so they that was the computer graphics there. But Richard specialized in everything with miniature and mechanical. So in Little Shop of Horrors, there was a bike riding through when the plant bursts through the building.
Well, I love that end sequence with the bridge, isn't it? San Francisco Bridge, and they built this entire thing, and then Brooklyn Bridge, and then they didn't use it. Right? There's like two endings.
Yeah,
well, they didn't use it at the time, and
I saw the last sequence of where the plants take over the world, and it was in a black and white. One had
rough cut, like a rough cut.
Yeah. They showed it to me, and I was like, "This is crazy. This would have been a fun,
amazing
ending for the movie." But they're both great. They're both good. But I heard that Rick Moranis, when he was doubling with the plant, I forgot the name.
Audrey
2.
Audrey 2. That it was recorded at a slightly slower speed so they could speed it up a little more and make the movements of the big, plant be more fluid. So he had to act a little slower so they could speed it up in post. And I thought that was just incredible, because it does seem like the plant moves and speaks, and the whole, moving the lips and making the shapes of the lips and all that. It was a really complicated thing, but they did it, but to make it more a more lifelike thing. So they recorded it slightly at a higher screen rate, so they could speed it up and make it more fluid. So that's crazy that they did that. I couldn't notice that at all. Incredible.
No, and I think the story goes that he because Aliens were shooting at the time, so when I was there, I'd wander around the Aliens set, in lunchtime when it was empty. And, Sigourney Weaver had to act with the Alien Queen. And, of course, to get the Alien Queen to move as beautifully as she did, they also, I believe, did a speed change in the camera. And so he was talking to her about, legend goes, talking to her about it and swapping stories about how they have to act slower and faster.
Yeah. But being so young and getting into it, I mean, at that time you were probably drawing every day. Were you like looking into comic books? Did you have any favorite artists at the time? Like Mobius or anything like that?
Well, actually, I was a bit of a Philistine really back then because I was so into special effects. And actually, I drew a lot at school, and I did my O-level and A-level art, which we used to have. Those are the exams back then. So I drew a lot at school. But then once I started working, I had no time to draw, basically, because the hours were long and everything. So I sort of left my drawing behind. And on the comic side of things, this sounds terrible, but I hated Marvel comics. I didn't really like Spider-Man. I didn't really like my dad.
Superheroes. You weren't into
my dad, he was into DC comics because he was a war child, and to him, the Americans would come over, the GIs.
Yeah, free comics.
Free comics, right? But I wasn't into that. But what I was into was the Hammer comics. And, John Bolton. And John Bolton he did this one comic, and it was called Shandor, Demon Hunter. And it was beautifully drawn, and I just love that type of stuff. But yeah, on the drawing side, and talking of drawing and heroes, I did meet Mike Plew, who was the storyboard artist.
Storyboards on Hellraiser 3.
Horrors. Yeah.
And on Hellraiser 3.
Right. Oh, was he?
Yeah, there was a version of Hellraiser 3 being done in England, and Pete recently on a podcast said that Mike Plug under Tony Randall as director.
Blimey.
Yeah.
And he was in England doing these storyboards.
Oh, okay.
I've been trying to search him out. I've been trying to contact him about it.
I'd love to see those.
Me too. I'm blind.
Yeah. Well, Mike Plug used to work with Ghost Rider and Werewolf by Night comic books for Marvel. So,
I loved Werewolf by Night.
I know.
Those.
Yeah.
Right.
But really also The Thing. He did these amazing storyboards for The Thing, for John Carpenter's The Thing, that were published in Cinefantastique magazine.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, he did. I mean, it's with the genius of Rob Bottin. I mean, I think he helped design those creatures. Undoubtedly, you look at his work. It's Plug, To answer the question, that was to see him, and I remember he showed me the boards on set. He came in to talk to Richard Conway, and he showed me the storyboards. And
there was a really extensive article in Cinefantastique about Little Shop of Horrors. I think it was the cover story. I wonder if there's some storyboards in there from that.
I think there are, especially with the end of the world sequence, all the practical effects. There was a company called Effects Associates, which was run by Martin Gutteridge out of Pinewood, and they were doing all the roots coming through,
big explosions and wind effects and all that.
So was that introduction to storyboards what rekindled your love for drawing?
Well, no, actually, it was brilliant seeing it. What happened was Image Animation rekindled the drawing. Yeah. When I got the job, because what happened was, after doing Little Shop of Horrors, I sort of left Little Shop of Horrors. I was a little bit delusioned because when you're a trainee, get the violins out here, but I had a 2-hour journey from Cockfosters all the way to Pinewood, then I had to be there by 8:30 in the morning, and sometimes it was snowing, and then the first thing it was like, right, make us tea, and then I was handed a bottle of degreaser, and it was like, see all these lathes here, and then I had all these wild dreams about making models and that, and it was like that really was sweeping the floors and cleaning up, which is fine, that's what you're meant to do, and so on and so forth. But at the end of it, I was a little bit delusioned, and also I'd been dunked into a tank of green paint as well, because back in those days, you had the initiation, you see, which they don't do now. Yeah, you can't do that now. But it was hazing. That's it. A little bit of hazing. So, and they were like, "Oh, you're lucky."
Well, you guys did it to me on the set of Waxworks too, with all those C-47s. All over my hat, all over my T-shirt.
I'm innocent. but so I got dunked in that, and I got a bit delusioned, so I kind of left that, and then I got a job at a model making company. So I did went to various model making effects companies in Britain and did sculpting and stuff, and honed the craft a bit. And then, but I'm still mates with George, and we're still seeing him. But George was like, "Well, Martin, I've helped you enough. You're on your own, rightly so." but anyway, we would still meet up. And then I was just talking to him. He goes, "Yeah, I've got this problem with rats." I said, "Oh, what kind of thing?" He goes, "Well, we got all these rats on Indiana Jones, and I can't quite get them right. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go home, and I sculpted this rat, and I got this, and I made this fucking rat. Boom, boom, boom. Pardon the language. And then the next weekend when I saw George, I said, yeah, George, I heard you talking about rats, and I just thought I'd make one for you. And he goes, oh, right, great. And apparently next day he goes into work, takes this rat and goes, this is what I want it to look like. And then there was a guy working on there, and that guy left, and there was a space for me. And that was the first time I actually worked on a film rather than being not so much as a T-boy now. It was like, right, I want you to help making the rats. And so I helped hair the rat. There was a gentleman called John Brown, who was a veteran special effects artist in Britain. He specialized in hair and what they call artworking. And so I worked with him, and we did the rats. And then I sculpted a massive lizard, a small glove puppet lizard, which I had to then grab Steven Spielberg's foot as a test. He wasn't
okay. Were the rats animatronic in any way, or just sculpted?
The rats were sculpted, and then they were animatronic. They had a mechanical device in them to do the claws. The problem was especially in those days, mechanics weren't as sophisticated as they are now. And so the bodies were a bit wide, and, you could see they weren't 100%.
To fit the mechanism in there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So in the end, what they did was they basically made the coffins out of chocolate wafers, and then they had real rats, and we just shoved these rats
mixed in amongst the real ones.
Right.
Yeah. There's an artist called Mike Cullen, who was a legendary animal specialist in Britain, and we had all these rats in the catacomb sets. And of course, what started as a couple of hundred rats ended up being many, many hundreds of rats, because they'd all be shagging behind the bones and the coffins.
Right. Reproduced.
Yeah. So this is for The Last Crusade, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question about the hair work on the rats.
Mm-hmm.
Was that flocking? Did you use a flocking gun and stuff?
No, actually, there was a technique where you would get actual hair, real hair, fur, I'm afraid to say. And what you would do, you would strip off the skin from the back, and then you would coat that with Prozaid, which is a medical adhesive.
Oh, I use it. Yeah. So you rubberized the hair.
Basically, yeah. And then you would take that, and then that would be applied to the fiberglass body of the rat, basically.
Right. I see. Yeah, there's a technique for doing something like that with stop motion puppets too, like for Kong and Mighty Joe Young. They would take like rabbit pelts, and they would do the same thing. They would peel off the skin and have it be adhered to a piece of rubber.
I think for a few, they used yak hair as well, which is a little more coarse.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's fascinating. And so this is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, right?
Yeah.
And when did you start doing storyboards?
Oh, storyboards came a long time after.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you showed up at
Image Animation
for Nightbreed, right? Because I was looking at the special features on the director's cut. Yes. And there's a segment where Bob Keane is talking about it, and he said, that a lot of the people that worked on Nightbreed kind of started with Image, but you're the one who had already started before you joined them. And he spends a lot of time saying how much of a great artist you were, and how much it blew his mind to see your drawings and stuff for the breed, and, testing out all the different things that you could build for a couple of weeks without actually creating anything. Yeah. Right?
Well, Bob was very sweet, actually, and he was the first person I'd met when I went for the interview. And the first interview actually was with Jeff and Bob, I believe. And so I had that interview, and then for 8 weeks continuously, I would call them every week and say, "Is anything happening?" And finally, Jeff was like, "Yeah, come down on Monday." But Bob was brilliant because he had that enthusiasm that I'd never met before Image. Before, it was like, "Oh, this is just a job," and that kind of very old-fashioned British film industry kind of attitude. And Bob was actually like, you went into Image, and I saw all this stuff from Hellraiser.
He's a fan. He himself is a fan. Bob is a fan himself.
Yeah. He's a good man, actually, and a lot of us basically owe that to him. His enthusiasm and all that stuff. Yeah.
So around that time is when you also worked simultaneously on Hellraiser 3 and on Nightbreed, right? It kind of both happened around the same time.
No, I'm sorry, it wasn't. It was Nightbreed was basically that was it going on. The only other little thing on the side was called Vampire Motorcycle, I think.
Oh my God, I saw that movie. I saw that movie recently. It's got Simon Sassy is in it, and the guy who played C3PO is in it, playing
Anthony Daniels.
My God, it's such a great movie. Oh my God, I had so much fun watching that. I bought a Vampire Motorcycle. I think it's what it's called. It's amazing. Listeners, go find that movie and watch it. It's hilarious. It's the most fun movie I've seen this year.
The funny thing is because the budget was so low. And so I remember I wasn't part of it because I was hired as a background sculptor for some masks. That was the first thing. But there was a couple of other guys there who were the trainees. There was Paul Spiteri, who's now, big makeup guy who's doing Game of Thrones and all that kind of stuff. And he and then there was Sean Harrison, who was a trainee as well. And I distinctly remember that they had to do a test of a talking turd in the toilet. and I believe Sean had the pleasure of wearing this sort of talking turd appliance just to chat. And, we took Polaroids. And so that was my memory of that. And then, of course, the bike itself. So they cast this bike and you had spikes coming out of it and all kinds of stuff. So that was the only other thing going on at the time. And actually, when I arrived, most of that experimentation had been done with the core crew. Paul Jones, Steve Painter, Mark Coulier, Neil Gorton, and Paul Jones. They were the main guys. And there was, of course, Simon Sace, who unfortunately passed away. But, Simon was renowned for designing the laminate configuration. The box. And there was Jeff Portaz and Roy Puddlefoot. So they were the main guys. And that kind of experimentation had been done. And when we walked into the shop, when it finally started on the first day, and Neil Gorton had designed this light creature, which never got finished, unfortunately. They just decided not to do it. It's huge, kind of swirly light with all these fiber optics and all these maquettes about, with all, Baphomet and all the various characters. So that was just, for me, I was just being in heaven,
Yeah, I remember Jeff Portas was talking about that there was all these fiber optics and a color wheel and stuff that they could make it turn all these different colors. And it's really amazing. So
then in Nightbreed, you made some makeups, right? You made some makeups for that. You work with Paul Jones making the Berserker suits. Was that?
Yeah, I mean, the first job I did was sculpt. We were given background masks, so I sculpted a thing called Pucker Skull, which was, looking back on it, was pretty bad, but it did the job.
Describe that one. Describe that.
Basically, it was we were just given a head cast and clay and said, right, come up with something. So I just thought, wouldn't it be cool if you had somebody whose skull is kind of crushed in like that and all loose folds of flesh hanging off. So that's what I attempted to do and did that. And that was foamed by Robbie Drake, who's one of the foam artists there. And that was foamed and made into a mask. And then I actually, before I kind of helped Paul on, because I was just helping Paul doing the Berserkers. But before I did that, I was given a pair of stilts and they said, right, make a creature out of this. So I did a sketch of this. And I was given a fat stomach as well. Because I see what you can do with that. So I
You mean a pre-made foam fat stomach that was just laying around? Or?
Yeah, basically they'd used it for something else. And so I got the stilts. One of them sculpted this backward twisted leg, molded it, and then that was polyfoam. And then I painted that, and then I painted the suit, made a collar, and that became the character whose name I forget now, but he was on. You do see him in the film. He's kind of on stilts.
He's Benoit Moteau.
Yeah, that's right. I think I sent that to you. I'm just looking for a picture of it here. But
is that in the Nightbreed Chronicles book?
Yeah.
Oh, he is. Yes, and he shows up in the movie in a couple of shots. It's
and he's more prominent in the director's cut. I think isn't that him that follows the history sequence, right?
Yes.
He's kind of the lead character of that history sequence.
Yeah.
that went down quite well. And then I was asked to help Paul. Paul had done a main mech head. Paul was very clever because he could do mechanics, painting, foaming, that kind. It wasn't like America at the time where one person
specialized in certain things.
Yeah. So Paul could do it all, and he did the mechs for the main Berserker head. And then we had to do background ones. So we did where you open the jaw. You had basically a wire going around to a pulley that would lift up the lips like that. Wow. Berserker. So I helped him with that. And then I sculpted Berserker hands, Berserker feet, and then helped Paul paint the suits and scumbling the suits, which back in the day with foam, you would scumble the edge.
Is that seaming, basically seaming?
Seaming, yeah. And then I came up with
when you did those hands and those feet, were those just polyfoam? They weren't hot foam.
It was all polyfoam, skin polyfoam, basically, yeah. But the actual body suits were on Lycra, which is like a, very flexible.
And those were hot foam baked? The body.
Yes. The masks were silicone foam, and then the body parts were polyfoam.
Not silicone.
No, it was silicone didn't exist at the time in that way. It was all polyfoam and foam latex.
Foam latex, right?
Yeah, foam latex heads and polyfoam body pieces. Dave Shiguri was I'm not sure if he's still around, but he was Image's polyfoam guy. He actually, funny enough, on Labyrinth, you remember the big, humongous, the robot go out the gates? Yeah, well, Dave Shiguri did specialized polyfoam. He could make anything out of polyfoam.
Wow. That's really tricky. That stuff gives off poison gas and stuff.
Yeah, it's horrible.
I've heard something about foam collapse. What is that?
Yes, cold weather. It's different temperature conditions and things will cause the foam to collapse,
Oh, because the bubbles expand and contract inside?
Well, it's the steam, the heat rising. But also, you see, in America, everybody used plaster molds, and they were quite shocked.
Oh, you guys use fiberglass. Fiberglass.
Yeah. And so they were, I remember when the Alien 3 guys, Alec and Tom, came over, and there was a sort of like, huh? You guys are using fiberglass. Oh, wow, how'd you do that? So, but, honestly, my knowledge of that kind of stuff was pretty,
limited.
Not the best, to be honest with you. I was a bit lazy when it came to that. But people like Neil Gordon and Mark Coulier were just, they just were exemplary in just knowing all that stuff. Very clever guys.
I think I'm looking right now at a couple of photos that you sent of that Nightbreed character that you talked about that would have the kind of the skull parts were kind of like smashed in.
No nose. He has no nose.
Did you say he had a name? What was his name?
Oh, is that the beetle? The one that looks like a beetle.
Yeah, he's kind of got this kind of carapace on the side.
Kind of like a horseshoe crab face.
Yeah, that was one of the background makeup, so it did apply. Yeah. But they just never saw it.
Did you ever name that one?
Oh, Beetle
Man.
The Beetle, yeah. I also like the fact that a lot of the breed, even though they had appliances, but also a lot of their look was the paint job. So
yes,
and you painted a couple, right? Like one of them is Saul, which was one of my favorites. I know you didn't sculpt it, but you painted it with those wonderful iridescent colors. Was that
Crozade? I mean, was that Pax paint stuff?
No, a lot of that was what was it called? I'm trying to remember what it's called. Aqua something. It was a water-based paint. So
you mean from Krylon? You mean like Aquacolor?
Aquacolor, that was it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't Pax. No, it was. If we would paint the appliance, with the Crozade paint mix. Pax paint mix, and then of course you would leave the edge unpainted, and then so when you applied it, and
you could blend it in.
That's right. Yeah,
Saul was a beautiful paint job on that one. I mean, just made him look so magical because he's got that big eye in the center of the face, and it's got those blues and those greens and those golds, and you put that on the face, it looks just so amazing, and the hands as well.
Is that eye hard? Is that a hard resin eye, or is that paint on rubber?
No, it was a clear resin eye.
Okay.
I think it was from some place. Put it in there. Yeah.
Very realistic. Yeah. Looked almost like a fantastic little marble. And Yeely Cat, you see him in the background. I mean, he shows up more in the Nightbreed Chronicles, but Yeely Cat also was a Nightbreed who was supposed to be able to, he's like a chameleon. He would have his body would transform. But in that case, you made him look like almost like a cloudy sky, like blues and whites.
Oh yeah, and again, I didn't sculpt his appliance. That was, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the guy's name, but he because he wasn't one of the main crew type of thing. But no, I didn't sculpt that appliance, but I did paint. I painted and applied it, and came up with that paint job on the day.
Yeah.
Describe what that looks like. What is? I mean, besides color, what is the shape, the silhouette?
The shape is sort of, his head is more of an alien-esque sort of form to it, rounded,
like a Giger alien,
the actual
or a gray.
No, it's just more like an enlarged like forehead and cranium, and he's got just like a loincloth, and he's mostly naked, and his skin is all painted, and he's got this wispy hair in the back, like he's bald, and he's got some wispy hair around his head. So that was Yeely Cat, and like he's got that female brow. Like that. Yeah, well, not so much like that, but we can put an image of that in the show notes so people will see what it was like. Can we put the images that you sent us on the show notes?
Yeah.
So you got some interesting also background characters where their face looks scarified, almost like a hive texture to it, like they were like mutated. So that was your application and sculpt, right?
Yeah.
Looks really good.
Post those in the messenger. I mean, in the show notes, or also in the blog or something.
Yeah. But yeah, I bet that Nightbreed was a huge learning experience.
Oh, it was brilliant. And the best thing about it was, I before going to Image, I'd like, okay, Clive Barker. I'd seen Hellraiser at the Prince Charles Theatre in London, and I was like, I'd love to work for that company. That was a few years previously. And then I went out and brought some of Clive's books, and just loved those. So to meet the man, to meet an author, I guess it would have been like meeting Stephen King, to meet somebody of that gravitas who was just writing just amazing stories, was really great. So that was what was brilliant about working on Nightbreed. Yeah.
How did you meet him? Did you go around to his house, or was he at the studio, or?
No, he was there. He would come in all the time with his cigar, come in puffing away and just looking at all the stuff and everything. And actually, the thing is, this is a story. Because the great thing about Image was like college. It was like the college I never went to. And we would just muck around and have a good laugh. And I could do a Dalek voice.
Oh, great!
Doctor
Exterminate.
Yeah. So I might do it if you're lucky, actually. So basically, Clive was in, and I was in the other room, and he was talking, and then I just went, "Exterminate!"
Oh wow, that is really good. Wow.
I did that really loudly, and the whole workshop just stopped. And then so Clive was like, what was that? So yeah, so anyway.
I think we got Davros back there in the workshop.
Yeah. I know it sounds so mad now, but it was funny then, and that's kind of how I met Clive. But yeah, he was obviously very involved, and then of course you'd see his amazing drawings, on top of his writing. So that was great as well. And that's what, going back to your question, Joe, a while back, that's what initiated my drawing, because we also had Chris Halls, Chris Cunningham, who basically directed Come to Daddy and all the wonderful videos Chris did.
Worked a lot with Aphex Twin.
Exactly.
Yes,
and Chris was a superb artist, and Chris would, so I was, like next to Chris, and he was sculpting his first mask, which just blew everybody away. And he would have all these drawings, and I would look at these drawings. There was another guy called Chris Fitzgerald, who again was another artist and had all these drawings, and he did some amazing background masks. And so I was surrounded now by all this fucking cool art and all these guys. And Chris was really young, I can't remember. I know I was 22, I think, and Chris was, I don't know if he's 20 or 19. I was like, oh, fuck, I've got to start drawing again. Get my shit
my game.
Because,
Yeah.
So basically, that's what initiated the drawing.
Awesome.
Excellent. Yeah.
So did you actually see like Clive sketching and stuff in the shop? Like I remember that Baphomet drawing that was done just right on the floor, on the brown paper on the floor and stuff.
I think he did. I mean, I can't remember witnessing it myself per se, but or he would come in with sketches, or he would, sketch something on a piece of paper and give it to Jeff. And that was the main stuff he was focusing on. The background mask, we were sort of left to our own devices, really.
So because there were so many Nightbreed characters being rushed in and out of the shots, I guess that initial period of 2 weeks where you guys were just trying out with existing prosthetics and trying out textures and paint jobs and stuff, that was just kind of the education to be able to get away from that, sculpt in clay, make the coil, make the cowl, make the mask. Because you wouldn't be able to do that for all the characters, right? So at some of them, you literally had to mix and match a few pieces here and there.
And a lot of body painting and just right out of the kit stuff, too.
That's right, yeah. So, any sort of content. I mean, now, of course, it would all be done with transfers. If you had a body paint. Pros aid transfers. Yeah, if you look at the Harry Potter stuff, Mark Coulier did Voldemort, and, they did transfers, I believe, or they had at least a stencil and much more sophisticated than what we.
Yeah, and they can remove his nose with CGI.
Yeah.
And Steve Hardy was the one who was creating the production design with the Midian and the ropes and the bridges going in that.
That was all done at Pinewood, and actually that set burnt down.
Oh wow!
And they had to redo it. But yeah, it did burn down.
Oh wow!
Yeah. And there was a model done right where they put like a miniature car in a giant.
Yeah,
model.
It explodes.
Well, that was Julian Parry, who I'm still friends with, and Julian is now visual effects supervisor. He's done The Witcher, and he's just done Wheels of Time for is it HBO or Amazon? Anyway, he's done the Wheels of Time.
One of those, it's Amazon Prime. Amazon
Prime. Sorry about that. Yeah, So Julian, and back then he'd done Aliens. He'd worked on Aliens, model making, did the dropship or part of the dropship. Yeah, so Julian basically built the miniature Midian, and they had this miniature car, and it was shot at high speed and fantastic.
Awesome.
And if you won't know it, you don't know it's a model in the film.
I know it's so hard to tell because it must be a pretty big scale model.
Yeah, it was like room size. You'd be surprised, actually. It wasn't massive. It wasn't a big.
It wasn't that big.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised that you also worked in a movie called To Catch a Yeti, which is kind of a guilty favorite of mine because it's got it's got meatloaf in it. What was that like?
That was fun because what had happened was we'd gone to Canada to shoot a film I don't think you've probably heard of. It's called Devil Dolls: The Birth. And it was directed by a gentleman called George Pablo, who got Clive directed.
Oh, yes, Underworld and Riot Rex. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So George, anyway, they somehow raised some money to make this film, and it had Russ Tamblyn in.
Oh, really? Wow. He was in the movie we watched the other week, The Haunting.
Yes, that's right. And it had... I can't remember the lady's second name, unfortunately, an actress, Stella somebody. Anyway, she was the female lead.
Keep it true. Stella Stevens, maybe?
Yes, Stella Stevens. And she was in it. And anyway, so I did a burn makeup on her, actually. And they were very nice guys, but it was really ultra low budget. Anyway, so we did that film.
Gelatin out of the kit, what?
Oh, on Stella Stevens. It was, it was using hot melt gelatin, that when you mix it in the dish.
Well, what was that movie called again?
It was called Devil Dolls: The Birth.
Devil Dogs: The Birth. Okay.
Yeah, Devil Dolls. Yeah, and I think you can get it. I know they did a DVD of it from Germany, but I actually have it on videotape. I don't have the video recorder, so I can't watch it. But we did all these animatronic little devil dolls because the idea was that this mad guy finds this red clay. Funny enough, this red clay, and he starts sculpting these characters out of them. And guess what? The characters come alive because the clay has some sort of magical energy. And these little devil dolls start running around, and the mechanical effects designer Nigel Brackley's worked on all the Bond movies, and he done the miniature stuff, and so he helped us create these animatronics. Actually quite sophisticated for the budget that we had. It was about £50,000 at the time, and anyway, so we had these devil dolls running around and so on and so forth. So that film led to Catch a Yeti, which was Bob's Hopkins' first directorial debut.
Right.
Yeah, and again, that was done in Canada, in Toronto, and Paul Jones was heading that. He made a fully mechanical Yeti.
Not a guy in the suit.
The only guy in the suit we had, funny enough, we had to go and we did stuff in the Yeti Mountains, which was actually outside of Toronto.
That reminds me of the abominable snowman is often mistaken for the Sasquatch. Yeti doesn't mind.
So you were saying that the man in the suit?
That was for a long shot of the Yeti, because the joke was that the Yeti had very long feet, so he could ski. So basically, we had this skier, and we put him in a big version of the small puppet suit, and he was on skis, and we had to dress these bone feet over these skis. And for the long shots, him skiing down the mountain,
that's hilarious.
It's great.
It's hilarious.
Bob Keane directed To Catch a Yeti. If you haven't seen that movie, go watch it because it's so much fun. And Meatloaf is in it, who unfortunately passed away just a few weeks ago.
He did, and he was a very nice man as well. He was a lot of fun, and he was a very nice guy. And actually, I got to work with him a few years down the line as well on a Michael Bay music video.
Oh, really?
Music video. Wow. That's cool. I like him as a musician and all his songs.
That was called Rock and Roll Dreams Come True.
That's really cool. Yeah, I liked him in Rocky Horror Picture Show, of course, Oh,
yeah.
So in the To Catch a Yeti, it says here on IMDb that you were like Yeti supervisor?
Ready Wrangler. He was the Yeti Wrangler.
Yeah, well, Paul Jones created the Yeti, but I was kind of second under.
You wrangled him.
Job. Yeah.
So it's like the Berserkers are on one side of the spectrum, and then the Yeti from To Catch a Yeti is on the other one. That's funny.
My funny Berserkers was because Clive was like he goes, they don't have any cock and balls, so I had to. My job was to build phalluses for the Berserkers, which was basically getting stockings or hose as they're called here, and
nylons. We call them nylons.
Put a big ball on the top of on the tip of it. Yeah.
And Nick Vince is
there was no cock and ball on the Yeti. So
no. But that's a really funny movie that if people aren't familiar with it, they really should watch To Catch a Yeti because it's you'll spend a funny time watching that movie. It's a lot of fun.
And Bob Keane directed it, huh?
Yeah.
He's directed so few too, so it's one of the few he's directed.
That's right. Done
a couple of others,
Yeah, I know he's done a couple others, but wow, that's cool.
Before To Catch a Yeti, because that was 1995, you were also involved with Hellraiser 3, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of people coming back together for that one. How was that?
By which time, I'd been continuously working at Image. And then there was Bob selected a group of guys to go to the US, so I wasn't one of them. I was back in the workshop. By then, Gary Tunnicliffe had joined the Image and had kind of rocketed up to become a workshop supervisor in a short space of time. Gary was very good at organizing and just getting stuff done and presenting the company in a good way. So he supervised the workshop side of the effects and the actual effects on set. Paul Jones, Steve Painter, Mark Coulier went over there, North Carolina, I believe. We had a little time designing what the Cenobites may look like. I actually have with me. I did a few sketches sort of back then. I did a couple of sketches of Cenobites, and anyway, they weren't used, but we all had fun doing them. Paul Jones designed the camera guy, and Steve Painter designed the guy with the pistons. And I did a few what were going to be background masks One had CDs in it, and one had barbed wire threaded through it. But
those were supposed to be victims in the bar.
They were meant to be victims.
Right.
They were meant to be victims, and I sculpted them up. I molded them, and then they were foamed. And then
did you use water-based clay or oil-based clay for those?
Wed clay, yeah.
Wed, okay. Yeah. Which is water-based for the audience.
Yes. And it's excellent because it's just so organic when you sculpt it. It has an organic feel. Like I've used monster clay, and that's a bit more waxy and difficult to use for me, anyway.
Well, the cool thing about water-based clay is that you can use water on it. You can squirt it down with your squirt bottle and brush it all down and stuff. And, it's really fast, and you let the air dry it out so it becomes leather texture and, all those tricks, plastic bag over it and stuff. And
exactly.
Did you use any of those tricks for that?
Yeah. Yeah, no, you can keep the clay going for weeks. You know what to do.
Right on.
So sculpted 2 of those, molded them, and then they were foamed. Paint them. I might have painted them, but we sent them off to North Carolina, and Mark Julio and Paul Jones, they made them work. And then I think it was there that they said, we should make these into Cenobites. And so they literally had to go, and Mark and Paul and Steve create the costumes and everything for these characters.
From the neck down.
Yeah. So for them, it was a lot of fucking hell, it was a lot of work. But and I made the hell drill as well, as did a quick sketch of that, and then
you mean the one for the reshoot in LA that comes up out of the floor?
Oh that thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you design that on paper and everything first?
Yeah, it was just sketched. I look at the sketch now, it's like, that's awful. But anyway, did the sketch, and I sculpted it and molded it and cast it in a Bondo fiberglass mix, and then sent that off, and then that was artwork there. And then I did Steve Painter plays one of the victims, so I cast Steve's head and sculpted a big hole in it. I think the camera.
Oh, is that for the forehead when the camera guy passes through?
Is that Steve Painter with the long hair, the wig? And then Doug Bradley was his first little touch-up job in makeup. When he had to reset the makeup, he had to do it again. So Doug Bradley ends up being Bob Bradley in the credits or something, because they said, you want to
he's a makeup intern,
retouch this. Yeah, he's camera head's victim.
Yeah. So that's basically, it's basically what I did. I think I can't think of anything else. That was my little.
Now, when those two masks that you made, those CD head and the barbed wire, mask, those were foam latex. But when you finished them and they came out of the mold, were they sent off to North Carolina just like that, or did you get a chance to trim them, seam them, and paint them?
No, they were trimmed. As far as I remember, they were trimmed and scumbled and seamed. Yeah.
Okay. Now, when that was done, did anybody pull that on their head, and could you see out of it okay and breathe out of it okay, and could you hear through the air holes and stuff? Because I was thinking about Pete Atkins wore that thing, and I was wondering if those guys had to use cuticle scissors and cut it out a lot on the inside or what,
Oh, I'm sure they had to make it work. Probably weren't they? Because they were just designed to be pullover masks.
Yeah.
They were generically made on just a generic life cast.
Just a life cast we have from Nightbreed.
It's never comfortable to wear those, but it's amazing how they started out being a couple of victims in the boiler room. We do see that, the DJ is playing, he's playing the CDs, and the CDs kind of fly out, hit him, and he falls backwards. And then
the bartender
Pete Atkins,
too. Yeah,
Rick the bartender, he gets barbed wire comes from behind and attacks him, and then they ended up being Cenobites. And even Pete Atkins ended up making backstories for them in a little story he wrote called Children of Fire. And a lot of people love those Cenobites from the third movie. It's funny how things work out that way.
Yeah, they even have their own action figures from NECA.
Yeah,
right. That's what they do. Yeah, I have those.
It's great seeing that stuff come to life. And then, CD had this kind of leathery strap thing on his face. Was that envisioned by you when you were making Paul Jones.
That was all Mark and Paul.
Just had it.
And that actually, the main costumes, I remember them saying, came from a pet shop. That was all That was all pet leads.
Yeah, dog collars and chains that they got from, and like Hot Topic. They went to Hot Topic and stuff like that.
Hey, if it works, it works.
Yeah.
Here in America, we have this chain of like sort of young people stores called Hot Topic, which sells a lot of leather and pleather and chains and spikes and things. And they went there and raided those places too.
Same people who own Spencer Gifts and Spirit Halloween superstores.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And leather pants and, whatever pleather and naga hide they could find.
Sure. CD has pants. He's one of the first Cenobites to have pants.
Yeah.
It's funny.
I think the Chatterer had pants.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. You're
film.
right. Yeah. You're correct. Yes, absolutely. That sounds like it was a lot of fun. And in North Carolina, where Bob Keane ended up staying and becoming a teacher in.
Yeah. Are you still in touch with Bob?
I met Bob a few years ago. Myself, Pete Atkins, and Steve Hardy. So we met up with Bob. So that was nice to see him. That was a few years ago.
Great.
I think he's got a son, and him and Sheila Keane. So they live in North Carolina, and Bob teaches at the film school there.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
When the director's cut came out of Nightbreed, and they screened it at the Crest Theater in Westwood, we were there on the first row. Me and Ryan, we were there on the first row, and I remember seeing you on stage. I recorded it. I think Steve Hardy was there as well.
Yes,
and
I put a little microphone up there on the stage.
Yeah. And I have a YouTube video. I'll put that in the show notes as well for people to remember that day, because it was pretty fun. And I think you had just flown in to California that day from England. And I remember you saying you were a little tired. Yeah.
What year was that?
Well, it was, Ryan, was that like 2015?
2014.
14, that's right, when it came out. Yeah.
Yeah, in October, I think.
Had you moved to California by then?
Back in the olden days.
Yes.
When did you come to America for full time?
Oh, that was back in 1990. That was Lord of Illusions, basically. Because when I came over
in the 90s.
When I came over here, I found the workshop. And then Gary Tunnicliffe came over with Bob, and he set up Image Animation, and basically ostensibly because back then, not like now, Britain is just everything is made there. But back then it wasn't, and everything was made here in Los Angeles. Even those type of small budget horror films, which Image specialized in.
You mean as far as like glues and rubbers and mold materials and all that kind of stuff, or
no? Because Britain now has a tax credit system: 30% above and below the line, and 30% for visual effects, 30% for animation, TV production, gaming. Well, they didn't have that back in the 90s. And so you had a history of films going to Britain to, like Indiana Jones and Star Wars. It was cheaper.
Right.
Yeah, because it wasn't unionized labor to such a degree as it is here. And then when Harry Potter changed everything, especially in visual effects. But anyway, so we were before that time. And so we came to set up the workshop here. And then I think with Lord of Illusions... And again, to go back to Joe, the question you asked many moons ago now, but that's when I first started storyboarding, was because just to backtrack a bit, I read a Starburst magazine. It had Martin Ashbury, who is a legendary British storyboard artist. He's in his 70s now, and he's still storyboarding, and his work is incredible. And he did a character called Garth. I think it was in the Daily Mail. British newspaper. But anyway, he's a superb artist. He has a son, Giles Ashbury, who is a superb artist as well. But I'd seen his article in Starburst magazine about storyboarding Aliens 3. Aliens 3. And I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And
the David Fincher one. The David Fincher one, right?
Yeah, and doing Devil Dolls, we had all these effect sequences. So I started storyboarding those, looking at his work. But when we'd set up the workshop and we're waiting Lord of Illusions and hoping that Clive would just we were going to be so busy. Well, the thing is, we weren't busy because Clive naturally had his choice of all, the Steve Johnson,
the different companies in the
right.
Yeah, and so obviously. He was like, you know what, there's a lot of effects on this film, and I'm going to split And anyway,
spread it around.
Well, Image ended up getting the short end of the stick, as it were, and I think Gary ended up doing the Mandrill. Is it Mandrill?
The Mandrill,
yeah.
And I think Steve Hardy at the time already had his White Rabbit design company, so he was also doing a set design for that.
He designed production design.
Right,
he production design. Yeah. And Steve is a great artist in his own right, and so he was illustrating all the sets and working on the magic show and all that stuff. And so, but I could see the Image, it was going to be a bit quiet. And I remember we were sitting around a table discussing the effects with Clive, and he was like, "Oh, I need some storyboards for this, you know." And I was like, "I can do those, Clive." I couldn't do them. I had no clue, really. But I just thought, you know what?
How about me, sir?
Yes, please, more. So I kind of saw an opportunity there, and I thought, you know what, makeup effects with the whole CGI stuff was slowly starting to creep in, and all that workshop stuff got a bit much, you know, after a while, all the stinks and the smells, and my skin wasn't very good at the time. So anyway, there was an opportunity. Yeah, you know, and so I put my hand up, and Clive said, "Yeah, okay," you know. So
come on down.
Come on. Well, yeah.
And that show sequence, for example, the show at the Pantages Theater, that was storyboarded by you, right? And there was also another person storyboarding.
There was another storyboard artist also,
Mark Baird.
Mark Baird, yeah, and he's a good mate, and he is absolutely an incredible artist. He lived in Austin, Texas.
There's a great feature in this Blu-ray from the Lord of Illusions one, where it says boards with Martin. Everybody must watch that.
I think we should put that in the show notes.
We will.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's Mark was brilliant, and it's a great influence actually, because his work was so stunning and just very fast and quick. And he's done all Robert Rodriguez's.
Really? His films? Huh?
Yeah.
El Mariachi and the
not El. He didn't Rodriguez. You know, though
ladder films
back end, but all the kids, you know, the shark,
Spy Kids,
Spy Kids, and all the movies, Sin City, and
you worked on one too, right? Didn't you work on the Predators?
I did work on the Predators, but that was for a couple of weeks doing some concept art, just some interiors and plant life and stuff like that.
And that was Robert Rodriguez's production company, right? But he didn't direct that one.
No, was it Nimrod Atal, I believe, directed that? Is that his name?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed Predators. I enjoyed it more than the actual one that came after that, The Predator, but that's a different story.
And I liked Predators too, but I haven't seen that other one that came after it.
Oh, you haven't seen The Predator?
Don't run. Right. Don't run out. Don't bother.
It's all right. I mean, it's all right.
You talk about the Shane Black one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I did work on that with Shane Black, and
you storyboarded that?
I storyboarded it with legendary storyboard artist Robbie Konzing and James Doe. Robbie Konzing storyboarded Judge Dredd. The original Judge Dredd. He's done
the
Stallone one, yeah.
Yes. So Robbie's an amazing artist, and then James Doe has he's done Driver and just. He's done recently did the Apple series Foundation.
So, wow!
So they're amazing artists.
Isaac Asimov's work.
Yeah,
the Predator had some really good expansion of the Predator universe in terms of like introducing a different kind of Predator, and I love the concept art for it. The spaceship and all that stuff. That was really amazing stuff. Yeah, well, just the story. I prefer the Predators one, but that's that's just a story.
Oh no. Well, to be fair to Shane, he had studio interference, and it was what I saw, like this amazing sequence of the laboratorized alien.
Yeah,
you had dog aliens and all these amazing creatures.
I know, it's crazy. He gets shot in the head, and then he becomes like a friendly dog for the rest of the movie. And it's just the concept of that is so interesting. Like the of course, a hunter would have a dog, so alien dogs right there.
Yeah. There was this whole chase sequence and. In the Humvees, and it was brilliant, and I can't believe they didn't have it. And so it was all changed.
I heard they had to completely reshoot that they originally, I think that was done in daylight, and then they wanted to do it at night and make it better.
Well, they just fucked it up, quite frankly. And it could have been really good. And so I think unfairly it fell on Shane, but he's a brilliant guy and very sweet guy as well, I have to say. So it was a bit of a shame.
He wrote Die Hard. He's a great writer, and he wrote the first Predator.
Right.
Yeah.
He was. Did he write the first Predator? He was in it.
Well, he was on set for rewrites and stuff.
Yeah,
that's why.
Yeah, he made the girlfriend jokes. He made the girlfriend jokes in the plane.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Echo.
That's what he's not. Echo. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is with the other Predator. Sorry, just to finish that one with the other Predator, the Nimrod Atal one. This, in my humble opinion, the script I remember reading out was excellent, but the actual final film did not live up to the script. Sorry to say, script was brilliant.
So, Lord of Illusions was the one of the first movie that you storyboarded.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the 90s.
Yeah.
And
90.
30 something years ago now.
95.
Here's what I want to bring up. It's the fact that as a storyboard artist, you have to bridge
from script
several things from script to production design. You have to be in contact with that department so you know what the set's going to look like, what the things that are going to be on the stage are going to look like. Then you have to know what the script is calling for in terms of like shots. Then you have to talk to the director to know how does he want it to be filmed. And it's almost like this, you're almost like so we usually say that movies are the director's vision, but without a storyboard.
Well, he's the first director. The director is the storyboard artist.
Yeah, so there's a lot of
to take a pass at the directing is the storyboard artist.
Right, that's what I was going to say. So you have to know a lot about camera work and shots and all that stuff and how to put everything together.
And often when he comes up with an idea for how to do something in the storyboards, sometimes it ends up in the film that way, and he actually directs that scene.
I think you answered the question for Martin there. Yeah.
It's interesting because it can be politically delicate.
Yes.
Because the storyboard artist really is the idea is that you help the director, him or her, whoever they may identify themselves as, create a vision and to you take the script and with the director, you translate that into a map. Basically, it's a visual map. That's how I see it.
It's a roadmap.
Basically, you're taking words and you're taking them and forming them into a visual diagram that the crew can look at and go, oh, okay, this is the feel of the film. Now, these days, it's called previs, and previs is very sexy. But the thing is with previs, it's very technical. Previs artists will render all the objects in a room. They will render the room. They will then put the lens on their virtual camera, and that will give you a 100% accurate view in 3D land of what your shot's going to look like, what you're going to need, how long your track is, are you going to need a Russian arm, what lighting, and so on and so forth. Storyboarding is not that. Storyboarding is, this is the feel of the film. This is what this is the idea of the film. And I think if you approach it that way, and actually I was awoken to this when I worked on 300, the sequel. The director of that was Noam Morrow, who is an award-winning commercial director. He has a company called Biscuit Works in LA. And I was working with really great storyboard artists like Daryl Henley, who is an amazing artist, has worked on loads of films. And so I was like, oh shit, this is really scary. But Noam, I did a sequence and I turned it in, and Noam turned around to me and goes, you're a really good storyteller. And I was like, and that kind of cracked it for me because it was like, that's what it's about. It's not so much about drawing. I'm not the best drawer, I'm not the best artist by a long way. But that man said something that connected with me as storytelling. storytelling. And that's what storyboarding is. It's storytelling first, drawing second, communication with drawing, comes second.
Sequential art that tells a story.
Yeah. And the thing is with, it's like on Loki series 1, I worked with Kate Herron, and Kate Herron knew exactly what she wanted, as did her DP, Autumn Durrell. And they would send me pictures of these shots. This is the angle we want, and the shot list. Now, when I work with James Wan on Aquaman 1 and 2, James Wan has just such a great sort of sense of the vision and the design of everything. And so James would be more flexible in that way of, here's the scene, this is kind of the idea, see what you come up with. So you have that freedom to come up with something, and then he would look at it and go, you know what, that's great, let's do this, let's change up. So both those methodologies are mainly what works. And actually my second storyboard gig after Lord of Illusions was
Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights.
Well, that was special effects too. They had to make a fake one for that.
With Marky Mark.
Yeah. But I storyboarded that. I did a couple of weeks storyboarding on that. And Paul Thomas Anderson he was like Kate Herron, he had a shot list. It was like, and there was no deviation from that. Of course, I had to see the location and know what they were shooting in order to draw it. But that's the difference between those various directors. So in one way, yes, you get to direct on paper. But, I'll tell you what, I think directing is a hard job. Yes, it's well paid. Yes, it's, you get all the fame and the fanfare type of stuff. But the actual being a director, I'll tell you what, on Locky, Kate was 24/7. You have to communicate with actors. You have to babysit actors. You have to understand actors and feel for them because they are giving themselves on the screen. It's very personal. The camera's right in their face. You have to also understand the technique, how you're going to shoot something, and all the pressures that come with that. So it's really storyboarding, I would say, is it's more really helping a director just get their ideas across. And it's a lot of fun to do that.
It's not so stressful like being on set.
Well, it's not stressful in that way, but it's stressful when they're, like 8 o'clock at night, like, right, we're doing this scene tomorrow and we need these frames or we need these. And I'll tell you what, it is stressful to, I know it's a first world stress of sitting down in the morning and you've got to draw. It doesn't matter what you feel like. You might not feel like drawing today, but you have to. And you have to do 30 frames that day, and they have to be able to read them, and then you have to collate them and send them off and number them correctly and make sure that the file is correct and you've uploaded it to the
technical stuff.
Yeah. And for example, Paul Thomas Anderson, you mentioned working with him, and you worked also in Magnolia. I mean, storyboarding his movies, he has a very distinctive style, but there's also a lot of sequences that are very long monologues. So it must
those he probably wouldn't have storyboarded those. I mean, you mostly storyboard action sequences or effect sequences.
No, I mean, there's always, even in those long monologues, you have to introduce the feeling because sometimes it cuts from one person to the other. It zooms in, it does this, it does that. So
depending upon the film, right.
It's like Locky, there was a lot of talking scenes, but sometimes you might have the over the shoulder and somebody's what they call dirtying the frame. Why do you have somebody dirtying the frame like that? And that means just somebody's in the edge of frame like that rather than clear. There's a whole dialogue, visual dialogue. Why are you head onto the actor? Why are you 3/4 onto the actor? Why do you have the actor they're talking to dirtying the frame? That will give the audience a different feeling of what's going on, as that conversation is going. So that is boarded on those scenes. With Paul Thomas Anderson, to be honest, on Magnolia, he didn't want the storyboard artist. It was the producers who said, look, we've got all these frogs falling from the sky. ILM needs to know.
We need to see boards on this.
So when I walked into it, he wasn't all that happy, and he was like, very sorry, but he was very dismissive and not that interested. But that's fine. That's, that's
everybody to each their own. Yep.
And then when you're storyboarding Tom Cruise shots, you have to storyboard him from below. I'm just joking.
No, I didn't. I didn't actually. I did walk past him because he was rehearsing stuff, but I didn't meet him personally. But he seems a nice, decent chap.
Don't look in his eye line.
No. There's certain that does happen, but I never had that, to be honest with you.
Something that's really super moody in terms of like storyboarding must have been X-Files, right?
Well, X-Files, I didn't storyboard actually. X-Files, I was got a concept story about that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, I did concept art on that, and that was for when the series moved down to LA. And so I interviewed for the job, walked into the Fox lot, got onto an elevator, and there was a lady in the elevator, and she goes, "Oh, where are you going?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to meet the production designer." And she goes, "Oh, yeah, she's on the top floor." I was like, "Okay." So we were riding up, and then she goes, "Oh, yeah, I hear she can be a bit of a bitch." And I was like, "Oh." I was like, "Well," I said, "to be honest with you, I don't really know her, and I've got nothing to say about that, you know." Yeah. She goes, "Oh, okay." Anyway, the door's open, and she goes, "Oh, it's that way." And so I kind of go that way, and I realised she's walking with me. And
it's her.
There I see the officer, of course. Yeah, it's her. Yeah, so that was how.
That was a test.
That was my interview for the X-Files. But actually,
it was a test.
Nice. Corey was very nice, and she, I drew and designed many sort of bases and underground things, and that was a lot of fun. And actually, while we were in the old Fox art department, and there was the original alien egg that they'd used in the advertising campaign with the light coming out of it.
Yeah.
So the original egg was there. Not the one from from set,
right? But the one for the poster.
Yeah.
For the poster.
Yeah.
So it's funny because Ridley Scott, he was a big reader of like Heavy Metal magazine, and he actually is a great storyboarder too. I mean, his storyboards are pretty well drawn, and I saw some of them once, and I was like, wow, this is really good. It's not, some storyboards can be more sketchy, others are more detailed, but his were like
a comic book.
Yeah, like a comic book. Yeah. So that was interesting to see that he also has that ability to storyboard sequences for his movie.
But the great thing about Ridley is that he sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. The great thing about Ridley is that he promotes and supports storyboarding as an essential part of the process. As he believe I've got this right, but he says basically once he's boarded a movie, he's done it. Do you know what I mean? In his head,
right? In his head.
And to mention, go back to Jose talking about Mobius. That's Ridley's main inspiration.
Exactly.
Mobius, who when I was younger, I didn't really, in my ignorance, know anything about, stupidly, but obviously now do. And what an amazing man. But Ridley
no longer with us, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately not. Ridley has taken, an influence by that, and he does his Ridley grams, and then he will literally do like 20 panels a day when he's not. There we go. Yeah, they're going to make that.
They're going to make this one. Yeah, it's going to be the Inkle from Jodorowsky and Mobius. It's going to be produced.
Yeah, the comic book, the graphic novel.
Yeah, I'm a big fan because I grew up in Portugal. So I only moved to the U.S. in 2013. So living in Portugal, I had a lot of access to British culture, mostly, and American culture. But I also got a lot into what's called, the European comic books, which we don't call comic books. But,
graphic
the Belgians, the French, all that stuff. So it's a lot. It's a very different in terms of like the way they draw things and the way they frame their sequential art. It's a little more sophisticated than regular Marvel DC comic books, but it's more cinematic in many ways. And nobody beats that than Mobius. I mean, you look at this Incal graphic novel and it's practically a movie, it's practically a movie in comic book form. So I think if they stick to this, they're going to have a great movie in their hands, but I think, I worked on a film Mummy 3 and then I was in Montreal and of course, and I was working.
That one takes place with the Great Wall of China and all that.
Yeah. So in Montreal, of course, it's French Canadian. So of course they had the comic shop, the graphic novel shops there. So of course me and my mate did some shopping there. It was just I can't speak French or read it, obviously, but
yeah,
absolutely. Just you don't have to. You just look at the wonderful artwork. Incredible.
Yeah, like a storyboard.
Yeah, better than a storyboard. Yeah,
but for the X-Files, there's been so many iconic designs that were made for like characters, you know, like the big slug man kind of guy with the big slug mouth. And
well, that was up in, that was the Vancouver guys, and so I had nothing to do with that. But that he was great. And Mr. Toombs, do you remember the thin man who could
he
could great
stick himself through the narrow passages.
The Fluke Man.
Oh yeah.
The Fluke Man had like a worm-like body.
Did you ever do any sort of alien concept art? Like for X-Files? No?
No.
Okay.
Just sets
sure.
stuff.
And Predators.
And made a few sequence. There was a sequence, I think, where a guy got sort of flattened into the earth. I can't remember what it was for, but I had to draw that and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Wow. Yeah. That's still iconic nowadays. I mean, they tried bringing back a couple of seasons, and some of them are really good episodes. But they're still a very active fan base. And let's see. And then you got into a lot of stuff here. You did TV as well and video games, right?
Yeah.
War of the Monsters video game.
Yeah, War of the Monsters. The main one I did was Twisted Metal Black.
Oh yeah.
Which is and so I actually did. With David Jaffe was the game designer and the writer, and so with him I designed Sweet Tooth's look and came up with his mask and all that. And then I did tons of just designing the background, what the world looked like, and the characters, and
God of War, which is a huge series nowadays. God of War.
Sweet Tooth was a clown that drove an ice cream truck, right?
Yeah. God of War, I did a couple of boards on that. I'd left the company by then, so I went back to freelancing. So I did a few weeks for that on the storyboards, But the Twisted Metal Black was the biggest contribution I did to the video games. Yeah. And that was, again, that was early days of all the movies and stuff now. Because, of course, now the movies they make are amazing. But that was early days.
Oh, yeah. Aquaman, and you've just recently worked on Renfield.
Yes. A bit of a jump from, yeah.
And then, G.I. Joe, Rise of Cobra. You did storyboards for I, Frankenstein was a very curious movie. I, Frankenstein.
Yes.
So you did some of the concept art for that one?
Yeah, that was with Stuart Beattie, who I met on Mummy, because he wrote the Mummy 3, one of the writers. He wrote Collateral. And, so Stuart's...
The Tom Cruise one, Collateral?
Yeah. And Stuart's a pretty cool guy. And so he asked me to do some preliminary concept designs and stuff on I, Frankenstein. So I worked...
For the monster? For the design of the monster?
Yeah, both sides, the gargoyles and the demon creatures. In fact, actually, the company wanted the creatures to be vampires, but Stuart showed them my demon design. They were like, okay, we'll do that. So convinced them.
Wow.
And then final...
I saw that film before I went blind.
Oh, yeah.
And something I didn't expect there to be a lot of storyboarding, but Jackass number 2.
Yes, I did. Yes, I storyboarded some of that. And of course, their stunts, they're more...
Yeah.
They're kind of... It's like the springs trap, the bear traps, where they're not fully sprung. They're sprung, they'll hurt you, but they're not fully sprung. So there's a lot of gags and tricks they use for those. So
special effects
activities. But Jackass 2.
Oh, boy. That's
one of
great.
the highlights.
I can imagine a lot of storyboards with a little guy on something and then a big arrow pointing to the floor.
Yeah.
Did you meet those guys to work with them on that, or how did that work out?
No. I met the director once, and then I just went home and worked from home and sent them in. Yeah.
So you have no crazy stories about them, huh?
No. But just to go back, I when I met Steve Johnson on Lord of Illusions.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, because I met. So basically, I got to go around all the shops with Clive. He would go around and I'd go around with him and listen and take notes.
To kind of figure out which company would do what effects and stuff.
Yeah. And so on and so forth. And with Steve Johnson, we had a preliminary party. Clive had arranged his preliminary, starting to shoot party. And I met Steve Johnson, said hello. And then he gave me his business card and said, you should come up to the shop sometime. Anyway, so I did. And I took my folio with just for a laugh. And he really liked it. He actually offered me a job, which is very nice. But I kind of was like, I don't know, kind of like storyboarding now and that. And he was like, well, why'd you bring your folio? I said, I don't know. I just wanted to get you to see it, really, because, you're a bit of a legend. And he had, he had his XFX shop and it was incredible. And he was doing Species, starting on Species at the time. And so he asked me to storyboard a sequence where the thing was in the containment box and then it kind of bursts out. So I did actually storyboard.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I have Species. That's great. Yeah,
so that was my
didn't we do Species?
Yeah, we did a commentary track for Species back last year, maybe, or 2 years ago. It was a fun movie to get into.
Watch.
Yeah,
because it's a great fun
H.R. Giger.
Yeah. You've got into a lot of like Marvel stuff eventually, and DC stuff, like Aquaman from DC, Daredevil for Netflix, I think was the
that Daredevil.
Loki. He did Loki.
Daredevil was before Marvel became Marvel that it is.
That was the feature film of Daredevil.
Ben Affleck.
With Ben Affleck.
Daredevil.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
that's also a fun movie.
Yeah, Mark Baird was the main storyboard artist on that, and then he had to leave, so he passed it on to me, and I did a few sequences with the second unit director, Alexander Witt, who is renowned for doing the stuff for the Bourne Identity, firstborn Identity.
Cool.
Yeah, so I worked with him a bit, and so that was quite fun. Fun going all the way down to where Marvel used to be based in Long Beach, and they had the huge set where it gets flooded in the end, and stuff like that. So that was quite cool.
One with Bullseye. One thing that's interesting is nowadays Marvel is doing something very interesting with storyboards, right? It's beginning this show called What If. And I was just reading about this last night. They're going to use, for example, Captain America storyboards to make an animated story. They're gonna basically use the storyboards as a
film.
They're gonna animate that into like a what if show. And I found another article yesterday also that there's talk of these animated series based on Marvel's What If, and they're going to be doing a special called Storyboards. It's coming to Disney Plus. And have you heard about this? I mean, I'm sure you must have heard something about this, right?
No, not really, actually. One of my really good and dear friends, Darren Dellinger, is one of Marvel's main storyboard guys, as is Federico De Losandro. And they both are incredible artists, but they do the animatics, and that's what Marvel has specialized in, is doing these beautiful animatics before anything is shot.
Sure.
A mixture of 3D backgrounds sometimes, but mainly drawn on a tablet. Everything's done on tablet now using priority software. And so that's what Darren does and what Federico do. And they're going to do that. Sounds brilliant. That's great.
It's sure that Storyboards will feature about 12 episodes in its first season, each 10 to 15 minutes long. And they're going to have actors drop into their voices. Like Hugh Jackman's going to play Wolverine in the debut episode. Robert Lopez, Teen Vogue executive director, and Olympic figure skater Johnny Weir are going to do voices for some of these. That sounds really interesting that they're starting to jump from these like storyboards. They're like, hey, we got something here that we can actually use to make an animated thing. So what kind, do you use a tablet? Do you use like a Wacom or?
I use a Wacom tablet, Cintiq. Basically it's called Cintiq, which you draw on the screen.
How big is your tablet?
Oh, it's only it's a 16-incher.
Nice.
And you can get 24 inches.
Yeah, I know a guy's got like a huge one.
Way steady on. But sorry about that, Dougal Entendre. But Yeah, 24 inches is a little bit large for me, I have to say. I use 16 inches, and so I use that. I do love using that tablet. And then I use the old iPad as well. Actually, on Renfield, I used the iPad to do my initial sketches, and then I exported them and finished them in Photoshop, just because I wanted to get a different feel because of Renfield, Dracula, and all that. But mainly Photoshop, which I've used for years, and the Cintiq, yeah.
When you're doing something like Renfield and you know that like Nicolas Cage is going to play Dracula, do you actually sketch the face of the guy to kind of look like Nicolas Cage? Try
to, yeah. I wasn't very successful, I have to say. But my other storyboard artist, Heiko von Dragenberg, who's an excellent artist, he was one of the board artists on the Spider-Man in the Spider-Verse film. And Heiko he got Cage. He got him very well. But yeah, you try. Sometimes it's like when I did Doolittle, I was like, oh yeah, okay, that looks like Robert Downey Jr. That was quite successful. So it depends. Some people, you'd be surprised, their face is actually hard to do.
Sure.
You recognize them instantly, but it's like, come on, And Nicholas Hoult as well, good-looking bloke, and it's like, struggle to make it look like him. But
for Iron Man 3, you got to nail that Tony Stark beard, and it's good,
Bob's your uncle. And the eyes, he's got those eyes, isn't he?
Right, and the thing, too, about storyboards, though, is sometimes they haven't cast everybody, but I guess that's not a problem with these major films that you've been working on.
Well, no, I mean, they, obviously Lockie, we knew it was going to be Lockie. But on Renfield, I didn't know who Dracula was for a while. There was a few actors I went out to, so just do a Dracula.
Did you just leave a blank face until you cast him?
No, do a face, didn't you? Dracula, Bela Lugosi face.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I could see Nicolas Cage pulling that off.
I think he's going to do a good job.
Yeah.
Do you think he'll have a goatee?
What?
Facial hair, goatee?
No, he's not going to have that.
No, he's going to have a clean-shaven Dracula.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so this new project, Renfield, it's there's not a lot here that I could find, but, Awkwafina is going to be in it, so that's going to be that's going to be really interesting.
Actually, it's Awkwafina because it comes from... it's not. People think it's named after the drink.
It's not like Stingray. With
right. That was my bad.
It's awkward because it comes from being awkward when she was
young. There you go. There you go.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So Loki has been a huge hit. People got crazy with Loki, and
and he did storyboards on Loki.
Yeah. And I imagine the 300 Rise of an Empire, though, that those storyboards must look amazing because of all the
muscle men.
No, I mean the amazing costumes and armors and stuff like that. You try to incorporate all that concept art into the storyboards when you do.
You have to. I mean, you're with the art department that you're lucky to get that stuff. And Patrick Totopoulos was the production designer on that, and of course Patrick is an amazing artist himself. He came from makeup effects, creature effects. He walks around with a black sketchbook, and I worked with him actually on Maleficent 2, and he just had this sketchbook with him, and he would open it up and he was like, great.
Yeah. So and he's married to Mackenzie Westmore, who's one of the Westmore family.
Right. So he's a really nice guy, and he was production designing 300 number 2, and so that was great. So we go and see the models, and he had a model maker. Actually, a lot of these productions have we call model makers, and what they do, they make an actual model of the set, not in 3D, but in actual real
tabletop model for
tabletop tabletop models. There's a famous one, isn't there? Spielberg, with his cardboard camera viewfinder looking over the two.
Right, a lipstick camera that they could put down into the model and get shots.
Yeah. So we had those, and we would reference those, and sometimes you use SketchUp to get your model. So it's a basic 3D modeling program. I mean, I'm not very good at modeling, but I can still, go to the warehouse and I need a car, I need this, and put it together enough to get the right perspective. And it's good for cars.
Yeah, people are using SketchUp to make 3D models, printed on the 3D scanner printer.
Yeah, it was developed by Google. I used SketchUp for a while. I had the SketchUp on my computer, and I drew a chair, and then I made this and that. I made a little lament configuration box that I did that. It's a fun software to use, but there's a learning curve to it for sure. I was just a complete novice at it.
Well, me too. But it's good. Yeah. It's good for basic boarding. On Suicide Squad, the first one, I used it. Train sequence underground, and just it was like, well, this creature's 10 feet high. So you're like, okay, 10 feet. Well, what's that actually going to look like shot from a platform? With a 65
perspective and all that.
Yeah. Mm. So in that case, it comes in handy.
Have you messed around with ZBrush?
Well, I got to be honest with you. I started, but then I was like, you go online, you see all these amazing ZBrush artists, and you're like, okay, well,
I know they just make you go like, oh, forget it.
I'm like, you know what? I'm not really. Do I really want to be employed?
Spend your life learning that.
There used to be this forum. I think it was called CG Forums, which was full of artists working with like ZBrush and stuff like that. They would. I had an account there just to see the stuff that they would come up with. It was just amazing, like virtual 3D sculpting and CGI sculpting. It was just amazing. Things that you wouldn't think were actually 3D sculpts. You would think this is a drawing or this is a painting. No, it's actually done in 3D. It's just the way they process it.
It's so photorealistic. You can't tell.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, I just decided that I'd rather sculpt in clay, leave the ZBrush to the good,
to the ZBrush guys,
carry on with my storyboards, and that's fine by me.
You're also working on another project that's post-producing right now, which is Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. So you storyboarded that one as well, just like Aquaman, right?
Yeah. Storyboarded that, and that James Doe's fellow storyboard artist, Federico de Alessandro, and some other guys. And that was James Wan directing. And that was shot in England, actually. I think that was basically 95% shot in the UK at Leavesden Studios, Warner Brothers.
Yeah. The James Wan thing that you mentioned, I noticed this on his movies sometimes. He frames his shots in a way that doesn't necessarily, as long as it looks good, it doesn't necessarily play with the space. It's very fluid. Like I saw Malignant recently, and it's a 2-story house, kind of a narrow house. But then when he shoots inside the house, you have a living room that's probably like 100 square feet. And it's clearly a stage, but it's funny how he has this style where he wants everything to be very, very large in terms of like having space for the actors to work in and stuff. But of course, we know not all the movies that we see shot in a house are actually shot in the house. Like Hellraiser, some of the stuff in Hellraiser was not actually shot in the house. It was a stage.
Set. Yeah, it was a set.
Because houses are not meant for like camera crews to be like, in one.
Yeah, you got to be able to remove the ceiling sometimes or a wall or.
But so I thought that was interesting that James Wan does that, where he kind of uses the space in ways that I've never seen other directors use them before. In Malignant, there's a particular shot. I wonder how they storyboarded that, which is she's waking up and she's walking through the house, and you see it as if the house had no ceiling from the top. And it looks almost like the house has walls that are like 60 feet tall because you see her go up the stairs, go into the bedroom, do this, do that. And it's just an interesting use of space.
I think that particular film, he was influenced by the Bava horror, from the 80s.
Mario Bava.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like colored gels.
Yeah.
Like Dario Argento colors and stuff.
But I really enjoyed what he did with Aquaman. That was a really good movie. I thought it was pretty amazing.
Awkward man.
No, that's Aquafina.
Right, the two of them.
He does like long shots. I mean, there was on that Aquaman 2, which I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing. The design and it's going to be massive. I think and just working on it, you just became a fan of it because of just seeing the concept art and. Ed Natividad is the main concept artist, and he is incredible, very clever artist from California. Yeah, it was very exciting to be a part of that, and with James Wan, I like my action in wide. So that was the thing. He likes wide. He likes to just show the audience the world that they're in. So I think that accounts for what you're saying.
The giant crab kaiju is what got me. I mean, I was like, okay, I'm in. I love this movie. So I can't wait for the next one.
I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised because, first of all, the designs, they're taking it into a very interesting, without giving anything away, very interesting
direction.
World. And I think, and just the adventures and where they go, it's going to be very cool, I think. Yeah.
But I want to see a drawing of Jason Momoa riding a giant seahorse.
I do have a drawing of that, funny enough.
I bet you do.
I bet you DeviantArt is full of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's from the cartoon, the Super Friends.
Yeah, but have you ever considered making a graphic novel? Are you working on any sort of art book right now?
The only thing, myself and my wife, we did. We wrote and illustrated this kids book because we got our son, a young son, and so we and my wife is she's Asian, so we thought, there's not many books out there that have for kids that have from the Asian culture side of things. That's probably changed a bit now, but when we started it, we based it on my son's grandmother, my mother-in-law, who came from Vietnam during was a boat person. So they came here with absolutely nothing.
In the 80s?
Yeah. And so, but she has a very amazing ability to take an animal and heal it. Like there was this, she had a hen and some, and the hen got into a fight with a cat and his beak was broken off and everything. And so she super glued the beak back and fed it rice water and corn, and the hen lived for years. And then she had a little dog, and the dog was run over. It was so bad. Like guts were out its backside.
Wow.
Put them back in. Seriously, put them back in, bandaged it, rubbed it. The dog lived for years afterwards. So we thought, wouldn't it be cool if this grandmother discovers this little bird lying on the sidewalk and takes it in and feeds it, and then in the end it turns out to be something sort of magical. Anyway, so it's all illustrated, written, and you can get those online printing companies that do the book. So we had to print it up, but then
printed on demand.
Yeah, but we haven't. But that's so that's where it is now. So it's all ready. But at first I was doing, we do a Kickstarter, but then the work involved in Kickstarter and everything,
it's a lot.
And then the
work.
Pandemic and everything, I was just like, nah. So I think we're just going to print it on. But I sent you some pictures. You can see some of the artwork from it.
Yeah, I've seen some of the little sculpts that you made for it.
That was not, those little sculpts was something else. They're my little pod creature things. Yeah, but the illustrations were the color ones are from the book. So so we'd like to do that. And I've got another idea. I'd like to continue telling stories if I can do it that way. So we're trying to develop that.
And what's the book title?
It's called Popo's Healing Hands. Popo meaning grandmother in Cantonese.
We'd love to make a blog post about it whenever you decide to put it up.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Let us know. We'll be the first to send people to buy a copy of Popo's Healing Hands.
Yeah.
It's wonderful how certain older women, they have such a nurturing ability that they can, bond and heal so quickly with so little, just by the sheer force of their love and their nurturing. They can heal in many ways.
And I think you're right. And I think because, this is dealing with the Asian culture, but if you look at any culture and background, we all have those, whether it be Abuelita, the Bubba, those those characters who just come from that.
Yeah, my mom is a Nana.
They've survived. They've had to leave their home country, they've had to go to another country. Mm-hmm. And I think you never get tired of hearing those amazing stories. So.
Yeah. And in the Asian culture, the touch can be very important in healing. Yeah. Actually, there's alternative medicine techniques that they use that rely a lot on touching with fingers in different spots of your body and stuff like that. So,
and the whole cupping, where a few years ago, I was unwell. And so the next thing I know, on my back, grandma's there with these glass handle under them, put them on your skin. It sucks the skin up, and you look like you've been attacked by an octopus.
Yeah.
It was really.
Hey, Olympic swimmers do that before.
Like the Nightbreed.
Yeah. Olympic swimmers have done that before going on the Olympics, and people are like, "Well, what are those like circles on their body?" It's like, well, it's cupping. Apparently, it works for some people.
Martin, may I ask about education? Like, have you ever taken classes in any disciplines of sculpting, art, and drawing, anything like that, or taught?
No, I didn't go to college or anything. As I say, I started as a trainee, but when I came here, I did a fair few years ago now, but I went to a Concept Design Academy, which is in Pasadena, and they do amazing classes. And there was
you mean like the Gnomon Institute or whatever?
Yeah, I didn't do Gnomon. It was, as I say, Concept Design Academy in Pasadena, and took a few classes where I did do some ZBrush classes, and I did some concept design classes, and that really improved, and then re-improved my work. And I did a visual storytelling class as well. So before our son came along, I can't really do, don't have the time. But I did do those classes, and that was very helpful. Oh, and also went to Valley College, and then I did some Photoshop classes and some, which really helped my Photoshop skills. And I did After Effects class, so that was good as well. Valley College in the Valley.
Did you ever teach? Like, a lot of makeup effects guys also teach from time to time makeup effects stuff.
No, I mean, because I'm done makeup. The last makeup effects thing I did was Mortal Instruments, City of Bones. Paul Jones, he closed his shop now. He's just freelance now, but he had a shop in Toronto, and quite a few projects he brought me aboard. That's how I got to do Star Trek. That's how I got to do Mortal Instruments, City of Bones, Resident Evil, Silent Hill 2. And with the Mortal Instruments, I actually went up there and did a load of stuff with him up there. But that was kind of the last makeup effectsy stuff I did. Actually in a shop. So I've not taught that, and I don't know if I'd be very good at
Paul Jones is a great guy. We're friends with him too, and we plan to have him on eventually as well.
Yeah, he's brilliant, and he's working in England now for Mark Coulier.
Right, so, Coulier's Creatures.
Yeah.
What did you guys do on Star Trek?
Well, Paul, he was the first series, Star Trek Discovery. So he was the Canadian, because it was done in Canada. So they had a Canadian makeup guy. And then, of course, they had the US. I think it was Mike McKinnon was head of sorry if I got the name wrong, but I think he was the US contingent. And so Paul did a little bit of work on it. And I helped him come up with some of the background creatures. There's an article in, is it Makeup Magazine, I think?
Makeup Artist Magazine.
Yeah.
So concept art, right?
Yeah, I did concept art for that. I didn't do any sculpting.
Okay.
Yeah, and the main character, I did Dimitar, I think the character is. She has her eye blown out, and then it's replaced with a bionic one. So we had to concept that and design that. So I did the concepts for that. What
were some of the favorite projects that you've worked over the years? I know it's hard to always answer this question, but what was one of the most fun times you've had in a movie?
Well, I think the most fun times was image animation, all those films, because it was no holds barred.
You were so young.
We were so young. There's practical jokes, and some of the stuff we did was well out of order. I mean, we've it's probably safe to mention now because it's many years later, but I remember we would have poetry competitions in the toilets at Pinewood and
on the walls, writing on the walls.
Yeah, Chris Halls, Cunningham would do these amazing illustrations on the toilet doors. We would be working really late.
Rubber Johnny.
When they were doing Alien 3, you'd be working really late, and you'd go past the toilet and you'd hear brrr, and you're like, what is that? And you go in, Chris Halls is airbrushing on
the wall.
Oh my God.
On the toilet door. And then Chris, bless him, he then cut the toilet door off using a jigsaw and took that back into the workshop and continued the painting. So, if you did that stuff now, you'd be locked up, right?
Right.
And then, stuff like Chris made this fake penis and he filled it with this white juice. And then all the guys from the Alien 3 could grab Steve Painter, pulled him in, and then Chris ejaculated his fake penis over Steve Painter. You might have to cut this out.
More stories.
But there was all stuff like that. It was just hilarious. And the thing is, actually, it's funny because when one of the courses I did do, or half the course, was Dick Smith's makeup course. Way back in 1990, I think I ordered
his famous course that everybody takes, correspondence course.
Still have, obviously. I'd never get rid of that.
The Bible
with the original slides. He'd send you the slides.
Right.
So he sent me a very nice letter because you have to send your work to him for him to approve you to be on it. And a very nice letter, and he said, and it was like, you're very good and blah blah blah. And because I asked him about coming to America, and he said it was a bit quiet then, but if you came, I'd introduce you. So anyway, I did go, and Dick Smith did send out to say, well, you can use my name, and so I did. And I interviewed at a few shops. But the thing is it was so different in those shops and from Image. It was much more disciplined. Right. It was much more, you had to behave yourself.
Specialist.
And in Image, we didn't behave ourselves.
Quite frankly. You guys were always up to no good.
Yeah. So we're a bit. It was a lot more fun. And so when I got here, I could see it was. I worked for Alec and Tom, very nice guys, but I worked for them a bit. And then I had the opportunity to do Swimming with the Sharks and makeup effects on that. So I kind of left Alec and Tom's and I just did Swimming with Sharks, and that was more fun.
Was that just on your own, or was that with another shop?
No, that was just me, because it was very basic. The main thing was Kevin Spacey's makeup, and we went from doing a full shaved head, cuts and grooves on it, to what it turned out being, which was a very simple bald palette with chunks of hair on them.
So when you said Alec, it's Alec McGuinness from ADI?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Alec and Tom. That was, I worked with them, because I knew them from when they were in the UK. And they
Aliens.
Yeah, and so they were doing Goro for
forearm Goro,
yeah. So they were doing that, and so I worked a few days, and I was like, oh god, I can't fucking do this.
That thing was incredible. Oh my god!
They have an amazing YouTube channel where you can see all this behind the scenes stuff that they would do. Yeah, it's amazing. Brilliant. And how many times can a man get himself inside an ape suit?
Yeah. Well, there's those residuals,
Yeah.
You perform on set. You think of the guys who did Jurassic Park. They must, done quite well for themselves.
Like an actor. Yeah, they get residuals.
Yeah. Yeah, if you become a puppeteer. Yeah. Or creature performer. And deservedly so. I mean, you think stuck inside a bloody suit all day long. Not much fun.
Oh, yeah.
And Aliens 3 is also another movie, Alien 3. It's also another movie that I particularly enjoy, maybe a little more than Aliens, the James Cameron one, just because I like the claustrophobic, prison planet thing. And I know that story had so many changes throughout the years. It was going to be a forest planet, and then it became a prison planet, and then it was going to be like
a planet made of wood.
Yeah,
it was gonna be on Earth too. There was even a trailer I saw in the theater that said, "That was on Earth, everyone can hear you scream."
But just the storyboards for that one, must have been amazing. The concept art was great. It's studio interference, but finally, it eventually had like a director's cut released. So
most of the fuck ups in films are based on studio interference.
Committee.
The suits will come along, bless them, and we need the suits, and they have their purpose, obviously, but they will come along and they will take their thumbs and they will smooth the sculpts.
They lose sight of the art involved, and they just think about return profits. So
but the problem, you see, that's the bizarre thing about it. The very nature of when you give somebody the freedom to make, of course you have the exceptions, but if you give somebody, like Cameron got a reasonable deal of freedom to do what he did, and therefore look at the result.
Exactly.
You
give the actor or the horse its head, as they say.
Yeah. So, but then it's like you could talk about the Predator. Those thumbs came out and they started smoothing it, and then the director gets the blame for it. And
right.
Well, it's not that. Yeah, not really in that one.
We understand. Yeah. It's always hard.
That's why Clive only directed 3 films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Lord of Illusions is really underrated. Lord of Illusions is really where a lot of themes that Clive has in his work shine through in Lord of Illusions. A lot of things that we've seen in other of his stories end up being part of Lord of Illusions. But I'm with you when you said in this Blu-ray, I think it was, that you read the story and you heard about that there were going to be these demons coming up the stairs playing instruments made out of bones and stuff. And it's like, where is that in the movie? But the Origami Man sequence when he Swan returns and does an illusion, it's a pretty good sequence. The CGI wasn't up to standard back then, but the storyboards that we see in this that you made were really, really something amazing.
Thank you.
I thought
the only thing is, unfortunately, I mean, although I am now blind, I've only been blind for 8-9 years. I did see Lord of Illusions. I was even an extra. And I know that the CG, unfortunately, is being dated. Like we get better and better with CG as time goes on. And, that's why I love practical effects. They don't get dated as bad.
Well, you've got Uncanny Valley now, which is the term where the brain is so realistic that it becomes unrealistic. And the thing is, back in Lord of Illusions, they were experimenting with, especially when they tear the faces off, and they were experimenting with CG. And I think the best CG is a mix. There's no doubt.
Practical.
If you look at Boba Fett, certainly the first series of Boba Fett, with the visual effects are absolutely the creatures. I'm sorry, but you can't. Animatronic can't do that. You just can't get that. But if you mix the two, then as long
like Voldemort, where you remove his nose,
exactly. It's absolutely. You've got to make practical and CG, and on Lord of Illusions,
they live together, they marry, and they work together.
Yeah, and Lord of Illusions, that sequence, especially with the Clive's ideas, and that's what I was trying to say with Clive is that if you look at the Books of Blood, if you look at Damnation Game, if you look at Imagica, his ideas were so advanced. Now you can do them. The problem is I think, it seems that Clive's kind of sort of influence has diminished, unfortunately, because if he was back then and we had the technology we have now back then, you would have had these stories now because I'd watch I'd see Magic, or I'd see
oh my gosh,
Weave World.
Come on.
Yeah. Or a sequel to Nightbreed with more creatures and stuff.
They're definitely trying. I mean, Hulu is going to put out a feature film of Hellraiser. And there's a Hellraiser TV series in the works for HBO Max. So you never know. I mean,
Martin, what is your thoughts on those?
On those shows?
Yes.
I think the thing is you have to pay homage to Clive's rules, in my opinion, which is why the Hellraiser films, even, hate to say this, Hellraiser 3, which I think is okay, I'm glad I worked on it and everything, but it's not Hellraiser 1, it's not Hellraiser 2. The thing is, because the rules that Clive established, the order of the flesh, the design of the Cenobites, why they're there, how they're there, and even how they're photographed. You don't photograph something looking down when it's a monster and it has power. You are always, you're tilted up at it, you move up to it. You do those kind of shots. There's a pinhead, or the lead Cenobite, as you know, and it has a grandiose, he's a lord, he's, so on and so forth.
And you shouldn't see him in daylight either.
Well, exactly, and wandering around in a grassy field, it just doesn't work. And if you do that, you have to think, how am I going to shoot this and how are we going to do it? That was the genius of the first Hellraiser, when it's look at the wind and you open the box.
And for so few minutes on screen to make such an impact.
Exactly. And so with those, the question is, are they going to follow those rules? And the thing is with Nightbreed, I think, again, because of studio interference, Gabriella Martinelli,
producer
was one of the producers who really, stuck her nose,
screwed things up,
and fucked it up. And you saw the advertising where it suddenly became, Laurie,
it was like a slasher film. You thought it was going to be a slasher, and they just completely fucked it up. But the thing is if you could take that now with the magic of CGs, you could see the creatures of Midian moving and doing what they're doing. Or the Thief of Always, or a Magica, or Abarat, or any of these awesome stuff,
That's true for a lot of things. I mean, some stuff is being done right now, like, for example, The Wheel of Time and, big adaptations of, like, book series, Foundation, and stuff like that. So who knows? If this stuff in Hulu and HBO gets successful, there might be other options for other stuff that we like from Clive to show up as productions. I mean,
his material is there. It still stands to this day. Even the Books of Blood. Now, I didn't see the last adaptations of Books of Blood, but
on Hulu,
those stories again, they're so, which is why I went back and mentioned the original story that Lord of Illusions came from, because you couldn't do that then. You couldn't do the figure. That figure that drifts around the street, or the one that's made of all the building. You couldn't do it back then. Now you can.
You can. And Unreal Engine right now is a big part of
like they're using on the Boba Fett and the Mandalorian.
Yeah, because a lot of stuff that we see on TV shows and locations that we see behind the actors are actually not there really. It's just a green screen and a backlot, and then they just put
a three-dimensional object in the shot with them, but not.
It's actually CG. It's actually a screen now. It's not green screen. It's actually LED screen. Yeah. So basically, it's basically going back to the old days of back projection.
Right.
You don't need
like in The Mandalorian.
The screen splitter.
Like The Mandalorian, they have these gigantic screens in real time, in camera. Being, projected.
And you can change the background, and you've got, because it's 3D rendered, when you shift the parallax of the camera, when you've got a projected scene like
the perspective
in 2001 Space Odyssey, the perspective doesn't shift. But when you rotate your camera or the lens, with now the 3D shifts to the camera. So that's why it looks
amazing.
Better now.
Like the Dawn of Man sequence in 2001, which is a front projection sequence. Exactly. You couldn't move the camera. The camera had to stay rock steady.
Yeah, but you're talking about the 70s, right? So
60s.
67.
Right. Yeah, 67. Yeah. There you go.
And it's a great sequence. And it's
it's beautiful.
And basically, that's what the Unreal Engine is now, really.
Well, I'm looking forward to Renfield and the new Aquaman movie. And I got to get more into Loki, because I know I've seen some of it, but people have gone crazy about Loki.
Yeah, I love that show.
Especially there's an alligator Loki. I mean, it became it became viral on the internet. People went nuts. Yes. But definitely let us know more about Popo's Healing Hands as it comes out.
I will.
And I want to thank you so much for your time today and giving us a little bit of insight on the artist and your career throughout the years. And this was a lot of fun, very informative. I loved it.
And guess what, listeners? Guess what, listeners? This was his very first podcast interview.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, we're
Cherry
honored.
Popped.
Wonderful. We've had so many people like Jeff, actors from Nightbreed and Hellraiser. We've had, a whole bunch of people. So, now you're one of us. Now you're one of the Barker.
One of us. Yeah. One of us.
Google gobble.
One of us.
Thank you so much. I know your time is very valuable, but this was a lot of fun. I hope to talk to you again in the future for some other projects. Okay.
Yeah, I hope so. Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate the interest.
Watch out for more episodes. The Duels of Blood final volume, Jericho Squad 77 will return, and the commentary for JoJo Baby.
And this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have subscribed. You can find the Clive Barker Podcast wherever you find audio. Show notes for this episode, as well as news and reviews, can be found at our website at www.clivebarkercast.com. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial podcast and blog that is not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans. Watch for our annual Kickstarter fundraisers to get some cool stuff, and you can buy t-shirts on our TeePublic store. Go to tpublic.com and search for BarkerCast.
Thanks for listening.